Hi again, Chantal. I'm actually going to be co-presenting with Unique. So Unique, feel free to come down when it's your turn. And as you know, I'm with the Geomatics and Cartographic Research Center, with Carleton University and Peter. And I'm actually so glad to be able to go after Laura because we've been actually working with her and with the CWIN team to build off of the work that's been done there, as well as the previous work with CCADI. So in general, like the problem, as Laura effectively communicated, was there's the lack of data standardization and interoperability generally. But highlighting even what Peter talked about earlier, there's different interoperability levels. So even with use level metadata and project level metadata. So from the examples that we've seen, it was really the metadata level that's kind of that higher project level. And what I will be talking about now is what we're looking to expand upon at that data set use level. So how do you make the data sets more interoperable with standardization and increase knowledge translation and whatnot moving forward? So the use case, and like I said, we've been building off of the work that's been done with CCADI. So you've heard that term a couple of times by now, the Canadian Consortium for Arctic Data Interoperability. And although we've gone through a name change to the Canadian Polar Data Consortium, I will continue to use CCADI for this presentation just because this was the work that was done under the original project under use case 3 that actually looked at creating examples and using the crosswalking at the metadata level as well as that use level. So the kind of like, why are we focusing on oceanographic buoy data? And Taihan is here too, who helped lead use case 3 and all the rest of the CCADI team. We were trying to effectively make sure it was cross-cutting, had some climatic impact, large-scale projects. And CCADI and the CWIN use case that Unique will talk about briefly in a moment is just highlighting the different control vocabularies that were already out there and doing that crosswalking. So when I actually met with Laura a couple of weeks ago, maybe beginning of September, time's flying, she showed all of the fantastic crosswalking vocabularies that they currently host. And so part of the project that I'll show in the next slide now is kind of where are the gaps, both at the metadata project level again and the use level, because they have some vocabularies that were mapped, and I have them all listed here with all the different acronyms. We know we love our acronym soup. And there are some overlapping qualities, and so one, checking are their mappings or crosswalking the same as what CCADI's done in the past? Are they mapping just as the same as terms, or is there mappings beyond the kind of one-to-one? And it will be a little bit more straightforward if I show this slide. So you can see the metadata project level mapping, and we have all of the terms here. It's just ISO and schema.org. But as you saw the slide previously, we have a lot of, I think a total of 4 vocabularies mapped, where the WMO team was up to, I think they were up to 7. So we had the project level metadata, and that's where the semantic mediator came from that I presented on briefly on my last presentation. And now we're looking at using NetCDF at that use level. There are relatable terms and that overlap with the metadata level and whatnot, but we really want to look at prioritizing, again, the interoperability at the data set level. And part of this comes out of the work that's being done with Arctic Passion. It is part of one of the work packages that was there. And so it's really just kind of the stacking that we've been doing with CCADI, at least from our perspective with the Canadians. I know Laura's been hard at work for, 5 or 8 years at this point, doing their mappings and whatnot and providing it in a semantically rich and linked way. But CCADI, and from the Canadian perspective, started as the base. And then we've had CWIN through actually planning the Polar Data Forum here. We were connecting with Claire, and she was like, oh, did you know that we built on the CCADI mappings? And we're like, no. And they actually built a fantastic tooling to help researchers, reach this level of semantic interoperability that we don't normally see. So I'm trying to not steal your thunder, Unique. And then from there, we were able to connect with the WMO team and again, try to reduce the siloing. We're all doing similar things, but making sure we're not reproducing the wheel. And actually collaborating and building off of each other's work. So with that, I will hand it over to Unique.
Thanks, Chantal. So from the Canvin perspective, this vocabulary mapping exercise was really useful for us. It was sort of our next step in terms of implementing these fair data principles. So we really wanted to focus on the interoperability aspect. So not only at our local organizational level, but also nationally and internationally. So very simply put, we wanted the data that we share to be as understandable and reusable as possible. And this vocabulary mapping was a big part of doing that. So a major challenge that we faced, and we still face, but we have made significant progress, is that at CIOS we have core instruments that we use. So they're consistently producing data like our Castaway CTDs and our Idronauts. But the data management within the different research groups was really poor. So from very basic things like data organization, documentation, data standardization, none of that was managed very well. And to make things worse, we had a really high turnover of technicians. So you had one technician who would process data using the variable names as they came off the instrument. And then you had another technician who would change the variable name somewhere along the way in their processing. So when you had someone new come along, a new user or a new technician, they'd be looking at these different data files and they're like, okay, are these the same variables? Are they from the same instrument? Can I merge this data or compare this data? And so it just added this layer of complexity because then they had to set up another meeting once again to discuss the management of this data. So it added this layer of uncertainty, and that really hindered proper reuse of the data. So as a result of that, we really decided that we needed standardized workflows for each of these core data sets. And a big part of that is the variable standardization. So that is why we went ahead and expanded that CCADI mapping to match our core instruments or to accommodate those key instruments and variables. So we have this really extensive spreadsheet of all of our vocabulary mappings and our metadata mappings. And from that, we've extracted some key variables that we wanted to create a user-friendly web application for researchers so they can look for the terms that they're using. So they can search for a category. So the category is alkalinity. And once they've selected that, they'll have a drop-down menu of different terms. It drills down into the different terms that fall under that category. And then they can choose the term that best fits the one that they're working with. So this was just an easy way for them to standardize their variables because it's not something they really want to do. Well, we have a few more ideas for this app. Right now it's pretty basic, but we also would like the user to have the option to search by instruments. So just depending on what instrument you're using, you'll get a list of terms, or to search by the term that is produced directly from the instrument, because a lot of times that is what technicians are used to. So we have quite a few ideas going forward, but that is from the Canvin perspective. Thanks.
Thanks, Unique. Yeah, and it's a really great example of that. Canvin did expand off of CCADI, and now we are going to try to take it one step further and hopefully feed it back down into Canvin's tooling. So I'm calling this the expansion ×2 or 2.0, and this is where we are going to try and leverage the NetCDF at the use level and project level, because NetCDF already has the data set metadata embedded into one file. It's not like it sits on top, which regular metadata or documentation does. And so you can see I'm not super far along just yet figuring out where the gaps are or where the overlaps have happened, but we have our global attributes as well as trying to see what's already been in CCADI, again, what's in C1, WMO, and then the specific vocabularies. So once we have that sort of information set up, we're hoping for our potential impact is increase interoperability, number one, but also since we can hopefully feed it back down to CWIN, it will be a better, more supportive space for researchers, following the existing standards and contribute to data aggregation on a larger scale while learning how to practice good data hygiene. We're hoping for data repositories to get a greater opportunity to leverage data holdings and creating better value. And then obviously one of the key impacts that we've noticed is just the collaborative aspect in between Arctic Passion, WMO, CCADI or CPDC now, and the CanWin team, really trying to not reinvent the wheel and leverage things. So I really appreciate Laura for going into more of the technical details of what the mappings look like encoded. And I will just add that our CCADI, the CCADI examples are available in RDF too, but where we are currently at with some of the spreadsheets, more human readable, like CanWin's manual spreadsheet, and the one that I'm currently working off of will get to a more technical aspect in the end. And the ultimate goal is to produce a vocabulary server that Peter will be in Norway working away for the next month to get that set up and running, so it'll be more usable for others more globally as well. And with that, thank you.